Goblin Reddit. Today's story is
My wife and her children treated me like a simple truck driver for 9 years, until they discovered that this fool controlled their entire life of luxury. Well, Reddit, after spending 3 whole hours reading posts about abused stepfathers, I thought that sharing my personal story might help some other unfortunate person avoid the situation I went through. I warn you that this will be long and may contain spelling mistakes, as I am exhausted from writing on my phone while in my truck. I am 41 years old, male, and have been behind the wheel of trucks since I was 23. I started with no resources other than a commercial driver's license and the dream of one day owning my own truck. I worked hard, lived in that truck, and saved every penny until I could afford a Peterbilt. In reality, I was doing quite well. I had my own established route, regular customers, and I even started to accumulate considerable savings. I had no wife or children, it was just me and my dog, enjoying life on the road. I wasn't rolling in money, but I had it all under control. My truck was paid for in full, I had a small apartment that I hardly ever used, and enough extra money to treat myself to a good feast of meat whenever I wanted. Not bad at all for someone who grew up in a mobile home park without any resources. First, you need to understand how this whole mess started. It happened in 2015 when I was in a pet shop buying food for my German Shepherd Ghost. Ghost was a big dog I had rescued a year earlier. It was the best decision I made, but basically it's the only good decision in this whole story. I was there comparing dog food prices when a child literally crashed into my legs at full speed. I mean, this kid was running wild. Ghost started wagging his tail enthusiastically. This little boy, who I later found out was called Liam, was about 7 or 8 years old. Behind him came a woman with the expression of someone completely exhausted by life, holding a little girl's hand. They were Mia and little Amy. Mia looked like one of those mothers you see in the movies, trying to keep everything under control but one spill for losing her composure. I helped Liam to sit up. The boy was still laughing because Ghost was giving him the sloppiest kisses in the world, and Mia began to apologize repeatedly. Sorry, he's very hyper today. Liam apologized to me, but I just laughed, because honestly it was the most exciting thing that had happened to me all week. Being a truck driver means spending many hours alone on the road, so collisions with children are a pleasant change of routine. It turned out that they were there because Liam had been insistently begging his mother for a pet snake. No joke. We started chatting. You know how it is, chatting while a hyperactive child tries to convince your dog to become his new best friend. That's when I noticed the Marine Corps widow's pin in her bag. At first I didn't mention anything, but wow, that explained a lot. I later learned that her husband had died in Afghanistan a year ago. A real hero, with a bronze medal and all the accolades. He left behind an 8-year-old boy who barely remembered him and a 4-year-old girl who would remember him even less. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I didn't notice that Mia was attractive. She definitely was. But that wasn't what captivated me. It was seeing her try so hard to keep everything under control, like when Liam asked if the snake could sleep in Dad's old room, and her voice cracked slightly when she said no. Ghost picked up on everything. Honestly, this dog, who normally takes forever to warm up to people, let Liam climb all over him like it was a child's game. Even little Amy laughed every time Ghost gently licked her hand. Mia told me it was the first time she'd seen Amy smile at a stranger in months. Then I did something reckless. I offered to take them on a walk with Ghost around the shop while we looked at the pets they definitely wouldn't be taking home. Mia was firm about the no snakes rule, and honestly, it was a good decision. Liam was delighted, holding Ghost's leash with me, and Mia really relaxed a bit. We ended up exchanging numbers to arrange play dates with the dog. She mentioned it half-jokingly because she didn't have one, but I think we both sensed what was happening. Looking back now, sitting in my truck with Ghost's gray muzzle on my lap, I wonder if he knew. That dog was always smarter than me. He immediately took a liking to those kids, but every time Mia came near, he'd get this look in his eyes, not growling, nothing aggressive. Just observant. I should have paid more attention to that. I guess your dog can't protect you from your own bad decisions, although he tried. Anyway, those first few months after meeting Mia were, well, I don't even know how to describe them. It all started with those dog walking dates we'd talked about. I'd take Ghost to a little park near his apartment complex, and Liam would literally vibrate with excitement every time he saw us arrive in my truck. The kid was fascinated by that truck, by the way. He thought it was the most awesome thing in the world that I drove a monster truck. It's just a normal Peterbilt. But try explaining that to an 8-year-old. It was here that I made my first mistake. I started adjusting my routes to spend more time at home. Any trucker reading this knows that basically means wasting money, but there I was, turning down good long-distance jobs to take local routes, just to be present at events like Liam's games and Amy's doctor's appointments. Mia was struggling financially. She never asked for help directly, but it was obvious. The apartment was always freezing in winter because she skimped on heating. The kids wore clothes that were a little small on them. I once noticed that Liam's shoes were literally held on with duct tape. So, yeah, I got involved in this. What else could I do? I bought Liam new shoes. The boy cried when I bought him some with lights. It broke my heart. I started bringing extra food, that kind of thing. Mia tried to refuse it initially, but you try saying no and your son is jumping for joy with his first new shoes in years. The relationship formalized pretty quickly after that. I started to stay longer and longer. Ghost loved it. The dog had 2 children to play with and more space to move around. I would come back from short trips and there they all would be waiting for me. Even Amy started to love me. She went from crying every time I came near to asking me to read her bedtime stories. The first time Liam called me Dad, I was under my truck doing maintenance. The boy watched me work, reaching for tools, usually the wrong ones, but hey, at least he was trying. I dropped a wrench on my finger and let out a curse. He laughed and said, "Dad, you said a bad word just like that?" As if he had been calling me that forever. I went out that weekend and bought one of those mugs that says "Best Dad Ever." Mia and I got married about a year after we met. Nothing ostentatious, a wedding at the courthouse because I had a deadline that afternoon. She didn't want anything elaborate either. She said her first marriage had been enough. We found a bigger place, a nice house with a garden for Ghost and the kids. I started a college fund for both kids, separate accounts in my name, thank God. I worked hard to provide everything they needed and most of what they wanted. You know what's funny? Other truckers used to tease me for missing out on the good routes, rushing home for dance recitals, and meetings with teachers. But I was proud of that. Proud that Amy would FaceTime me to show me her art projects. Proud that Liam wanted me to teach him about engines. Proud when other parents at school events commented on what a good father I was. Ghost was also enjoying the best life. He had his own space on the sofa, which Mia hated but tolerated. He followed the children everywhere. He even had play dates with the neighbors' dogs. But he never really got on with Mia. He didn't accept her caresses, he didn't cuddle with her like he did with the children. I also began to notice little details about Mia. How she introduced me as the children's stepfather instead of her husband. How she kept a photograph of her late husband on her bedside table, but didn't put up photos of our wedding. How she talked about her late husband to anyone who would listen, but changed the subject if anyone asked what I did for a living. But anyway, the children seemed happy. The house was paid for and I thought I had what I considered to be a family. Ghost had his humans, I had my family and life was good. Now remember how I told you that Liam was that sweet little boy who thought my truck was the most awesome thing in the world? Well, teenagers are completely different. When he turned 17, things changed. I had just returned from a 3-day trip. I had worked hard to get there in time for his soccer game, even turning down a better paid route to be there. I walked through the door, Ghost ran to greet me, as always, and I heard Liam talking to his friends in the kitchen. No, my real dad was a sailor with a Bronze Star and everything. This guy is just my mom's husband, but it got worse. Amy, who was already 13, started to imitate everything her brother did. Once I asked him to clean up his mess in the kitchen. It was like I'd asked him to donate a kidney or something similar. Why should I? You're not my real dad. There it was. I started hearing it constantly. Every time I tried to set some rule or limit, you're not my real dad. Every time I tried to help with homework or give advice, you're not my real dad. I began to feel like that was his new favorite phrase or something, and Mia just shut down. Always on her phone, always too busy to address the issue. Once, I even heard her talking to her friend on the phone, laughing that the kids were going through a phase and obviously missing their real dad. Real dad? They don't even remember him, as if I hadn't been there for everything for the past 9 years. What made it worse was that I began to notice how Mia talked about me to her friends. Oh, I was on the road a lot, always said with an apologetic tone as if she were ashamed. Meanwhile, she talked about James, her late husband, as if he were extraordinary. James was a war hero and James would have wanted this and that. They even affected the relationship with Ghost. Before, he used to sleep in the children's room. Sometimes they would argue over who would have him that night. Now they would turn him away, saying that their friends were coming and they didn't want dog hair everywhere. The only time they paid attention to Ghost was when they needed something from me. It's amazing how they would suddenly become dog lovers when they wanted money or favors. Then I started to find out about all those family activities to which I wasn't invited. Mia's family gatherings, school events, even simple dinners out. They would wait until I was away on a trip, then they would have family activities without me. I would see the photos on Mia's Facebook afterwards. One night, I confronted Mia about it. She just looked at me with pity, as if I were some naive truck driver who didn't understand how things worked. They're teenagers. They need space and you're away so much anyway. Yes, absent. Working intensely to cover all the expenses, their phones, Mia's car, my children's needs. But apparently my truck was no longer good enough for them to see. Absent, working additional routes to finance the lifestyle they had become accustomed to, it was like watching something deteriorate from the inside. On the surface, everything seemed adequate, a nice house, nice cars, the kids in good schools. But underneath, everything was falling apart. Ghost sensed it. He had started doing this where he would rest his head on my lap whenever he was at home, staring at me with those wise canine eyes, as if trying to communicate something. But I wasn't ready to listen yet. However, then things got considerably worse. Like my tools disappearing from the garage. They weren't anywhere else, they just disappeared. Liam used to help me maintain my truck. He knew exactly which tools I needed the most. It's funny how those were always the ones that went missing, then my truck started having problems. Nothing serious initially, a scratch here, a dent there. It could have been anything, right? But then one morning I went out and found the cap to my fuel tank unscrewed. Anyone who knows trucks knows how dangerous that could have been if I hadn't noticed, so I installed a security camera in the yard after that. Guess what I saw on the footage? Our darling little boy, Liam, at 2 a.m, messing with my truck. When I showed the video to Mia, you know what she said to me? Well, maybe if you were home more, he wouldn't behave like that. Yeah, that's when I started keeping receipts for everything. Every repair, every tool replaced, everything I paid for. My lawyer says that turned out to be the smartest thing I could have done. But this is where it really got complicated. One night, I was at home between routes and I heard Amy and Mia talking in the kitchen. Amy was talking about how a friend's family was having a big Christmas celebration, a supposedly elegant event. Mom, what should I tell them about Dad? My ears pricked up, thinking maybe she was talking about me. Just tell them what I always say, sweetheart, that your father was a sailor who died serving his country. They didn't even lower their voices. They didn't care if I heard them. I was sitting right there in the living room with Ghost and they acted like I didn't exist. Ghost growled. The first time I heard him growl was at the family. Mia jumped, tried to cover it up with a laugh. Oh, that dog is just getting so grumpy in his old age. No, Mia, Ghost just stopped pretending, just like me. But the highlight was when I discovered that they had organized a whole Thanksgiving dinner while I was on a route. Not just them, Mia's whole family, some of the kids' friends, even some neighbors. I saw the pictures on Facebook. They set up in my backyard, used my grill, which I hadn't been allowed to use for months because the smoke affected Amy's allergies, and acted like one big happy family. And the caption under the photo read, "So grateful for family, missing James more than ever today." I was out there driving through a snowstorm to deliver emergency supplies, missing my family. And they were pretending to be a family, pretending I didn't exist. That night I had enough. I slept in my truck with Ghost. I didn't even bother going inside. When I finally went into the house, I started making plans. I called my friend Rich, who's a lawyer. I started gathering documents, I took screenshots of everything. But I wasn't ready to take the next step yet. I still thought there might be something worth saving. How naive I was, but you know what the irony of life is? Just when you think things can't get any more complicated, the universe finds a way to prove you wrong. That day started normally. I had just finished a long trip from California, intending to surprise Amy for her 14th birthday. I had no idea that I would be the one receiving a surprise. I was making an effort because Amy's birthday was approaching and, although things were bad, I still wanted to be there. I had it all planned. I was going to surprise her. I had a bracelet that I had been saving for months to buy her. I got home early for once. It was about 6 p.m. The sun was still shining. I saw all these cars parked around our house. Ghost started behaving strangely the moment we arrived. He's usually excited about coming home, but this time he was tense. I went around the back because that's where all the noise was coming from. And there was a whole celebration in my garden. Catering, whatever. And right in the middle of it all was Amy. Mia was just telling a guest that her late husband would be proud of her, that it would be very sad when the time came to get married because she wouldn't have her father to accompany her. But at least her uncle, Mia's brother, could do it, since he was her late husband's best friend. Yes, the same brother who did nothing for Amy in his entire life, only turning up drunk at Christmas parties and telling war stories. I must have made some noise because Ghost let out a soft whine. It was then that they finally noticed that I was standing there. The expression on Amy's face was not one of shame or guilt, just annoyance. As if I had ruined their perfect moment simply by existing. Mia tried to hide it. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was looking at my house, my garden, a party that was paid for with my money. I found out later that Mia had used my credit card for the catering. Ghost was pressed against my leg, making that gesture where he tries to protect me, but I also think he was trying to comfort me simultaneously. So I turn around and leave. I get in my truck, Ghost jumps in and we drive off. We spend the night at a service station about 50 miles away, just sitting there with Ghost. Both of us staring into space. That night, I called Rich, my lawyer friend, and told him it was time. He just replied, "Finally, I've had the documents ready for a while." Honestly, after that birthday party, I didn't have the energy left in me to fight. I spent the whole night in my truck with Ghost looking at old photos on my phone, pictures of Liam's first baseball game, Amy's dance recital, all those kinds of family moments I thought we shared. But there's something that most people don't understand about the trucking business. It's not just one guy driving a big rig down the road. It's a business, contracts, bills, assets, everything. And while Mia and the kids were busy looking down their noses at the simple trucker, I was running that business like a real CEO. This house they were living in my name. The cars they used, in my name. The credit cards Mia used to pay for that fancy birthday party, all in my damn name. Even the utilities were registered under my company's name because of a tax arrangement Rich had set up years ago, but I kept calm. I continued to drive my routes, I continued to pay the bills, I continued to act as if nothing was wrong. I even sat down to dinner one night while Mia and Liam were discussing universities, which cost more than my first truck a year. I nodded, pretending to be the fool they thought I was. Meanwhile, Rich and I were going through everything meticulously. Bank statements, property deeds, credit card bills. Everything. We also discovered some interesting things, like that Mia had been writing checks to her brother, the surrogate father, from my business account. Or how Liam had been using my credit card to buy things without my authorization. The best part is that Mia never signed a prenuptial agreement, but she also didn't include his name on anything significant. She thought that not taking my last name meant that she maintained her independence or something similar. In reality, it meant that she had no legal rights to my assets. Rich laughed out loud when he realized that. You know what really bothers me? While all this was going on, they kept behaving as if I were the villain. Liam kept interfering with my truck. I caught him again on camera, trying to put sugar in the fuel tank this time. One night, I was sitting in my office, doing paperwork, when I heard Mia say to someone on the phone, "Well, he's just a truck driver. He won't notice if a few thousand go missing." Ghost, who had basically moved into my study with me at this point, looked at me as if to say, "Today's the day, Dad." I simply patted his head and continued working on the paperwork. What they didn't know was that I had been transferring money for months. Legally, everything was within the law. Rich made sure of that. But strategically, I was opening new accounts, redirecting business income, canceling credit cards, and creating new ones that they didn't know about. I even set up a new limited liability company for my growing fleet. On the day everything was ready, I went out for a long walk with Ghost. Everything was organized and I was about to leave there with all my money and my business. That night, I made one last call. "Rich, proceed." The plan we had been working on for months was finally set in motion, and let me tell you something about patience. Have you ever watched one of those nature documentaries where a predator waits patiently, allowing its prey to think that everything is fine until the perfect moment to attack? That's how I was. That Tuesday morning, I told Mia that I was going on a 3-day route. She probably thought I was being a good trucker, generating more income for the family. Wow, Liam was probably already planning which part of my truck to damage next, but little did they know that I would be parked just an hour away in my friend's yard, watching everything unfold through the security cameras I had installed. And it was better than watching a movie at the cinema. Rich was in charge of orchestrating this fun. The courier arrived just as Mia was having her morning coffee, or several in fact. 3 thick envelopes, each one a different kind of fuck you. You should have seen her expression when she opened the first package, the divorce papers. But not just any divorce papers. We're talking about a real manuscript with security footage of Liam's penchant for vandalism, bank statements showing how Mia treated my business account as her personal bank, and all of Amy's expenses, like her birthday party. Then came the eviction notice. Mia was always so proud of maintaining her independence, not taking my surname, but she never bothered to check whether her name appeared on the title deeds to the house. Funny how things turn out, but the final detail is that third envelope. Seeing his face when he realized that all the credit cards had been canceled, all the joint accounts closed, all the assets transferred, everything perfectly legal, everything documented, everything gone. Like watching someone realize that they've been playing poker with a marked deck, and they've just lost everything. The collapse was monumental. First came the calls from Mia, shouting about the money, the house, and how she couldn't do this to them. Then Liam, as if he had any right after what he did with my truck. Finally, Amy, because part of her lifestyle was financed with her mother's money. Not a word about the years I spent being her father, not a single apology in sight. Then Mia's brother shows up, probably thinking he's going to play the bully. Yeah, he wasn't so brave when my lawyer's associate handed him a cease and desist order along with a restraining order. The thing is, threatening someone who keeps all the receipts isn't a very smart strategy. By nightfall, Mia was crying for anyone who would listen. Mia was playing the victim on social media, and Liam was still making threats about my truck. Thanks for the written evidence, genius. But here's the best bit. I made sure everyone knew why. Over the next few days, I received hundreds of messages, threats, pleas, attempts at emotional manipulation, you name it. I didn't reply to a single one. I stayed in my truck with Ghost, watching karma do its thing through my phone screen. I stopped by the house a week later, saw moving trucks in the driveway. I guess reality is merciless when it finally shows up. Update 1. When I made my original post, I hadn't planned to do an update. I wasn't sharing my story in real time, only once it was all over. But I've been asked to do so I'll try to relate some events that have happened in the last few months to fill out a post. To begin with, the most valuable thing I own, which is Ghost. Everyone asks me how old he is, so I will tell you that he is 11, almost 12. That's according to my calculations, because when I adopted him nobody knew exactly how old he was, but it could be estimated that he was already 1 or 2 years old. He is an old dog, but he is my Ghost, so he still accompanies me on my routes. He always lies down, and when we stop, I help him down, as he's not as agile as he used to be. Despite that, he still chases after any animal he finds. Although he no longer tries to catch it. I've resumed my longer routes, but only because I enjoy taking those long trips with just my Ghost, some good music and miles ahead of me. I have several trucks that are driven by employees, so I could retire, perhaps adopt a more leisurely pace. But there's not much to do if I stay at home, maybe reflect on everything that's happened to me, and that's not what I want. However, my therapy is driving, and I don't think anything can replace it. Well, maybe an extended ride with Ghost. As for what I considered my family, I have not been in touch with them during all this time. I don't think they want to talk to me either. I meant nothing to them, but after my response, I think I represent even less. I don't care. I have no desire to be relevant to a group of people like them. I only know that they have had to move out and their life has returned to being more or less as it was before. Mia never bothered to look for a better job when she was living comfortably with me, so now she has to face the difficulties of paying the bills and the rent again. On the other hand, Liam has gotten into trouble because his behavioral difficulties have increased. I know that Mia has had to go to the police station to look for him on more than one occasion. Maybe it's my responsibility, because I didn't discipline him properly. But since I wasn't their father, according to them, I did a good job of not being a good father. And I don't have much information about Amy, but I guess she can no longer boast of a life with certain luxuries, like the one I provided for her. Which, although not extraordinary, is superior to her current situation. It was easy for her to boast about her heroic father while she was using my money. The most ironic thing about this whole situation is that I was never jealous of Mia's late husband. Sometimes I think that a man who served this country surely possessed integrity, so he would have been deeply disappointed in his family. I think that under different circumstances, we could have been good friends. And I even think that Ghost could have wagged his tail in friendship.